Just a few days ago, the second spot on the DPS list was taken by Havok, the rank 1 Reaper in EU, and just a glance at his profile, he's pretty much a Reaper OTP. So let's take a look at one of his most complex games, facing against the infamous Yznsa, who isn't just insanely good at the game, but plays one of the classic Reaper counters. The first pattern in Havok's play is his tendency to flank early with TP to try and get on top of the Juno. Juno has no defensive abilities to deal with Reaper, whereas Brig or Cass both have sustain and crowd control abilities to handle the Reaper. While this doesn't look like much, it forces the Juno to stack up with their team, and now the Reaper's got a great angle to attack from. He ends up chunking the D.Va down a decent amount and teleporting out early so he doesn't get stuns. He then flanks to the enclosed room on the right, choosing to go on the backline as they're easier to go on compared to the D.Va. Unfortunately, his Juno ends up dying and he barely misses out on getting the D.Va to demech. Coming back from spawn, we see Havok spot the enemy Juno healing her D.Va from distance, with that theme of trying to teleport on top of the Juno continuing. However, he unfortunately misses more shots than the ones Mikey takes with when it comes to DMing e-girls. So it's not a surprise that he doesn't get the kill here. However, just by virtue of the Reaper aggressing onto the Juno, he forces the Juno to split from his own backline, basically meaning that the Cassidy and Brig are free pickings. This is the strength of Reaper. You could miss every shot and still zone, split, and scare backlines just by the inherent design of your character. Now, with the Juno zones, Havok ends up getting the Cassidy low and rates out early to avoid the nade, coming back to finish off the Brig. While his team doesn't win the fight here, the enemy team are forced to use 4 ultimates just to swing the fight back in their favour, whereas Havok's team only uses 1. You can see the power of zoning in the very next fight, where Havok just walks to the right side high ground, doesn't even fire a shot, and not only does the Genji deflect out of pure panic, he also immediately dashes away. Now having won the space, Havok teleports to the top of the windmill, staying in his orbital ray and almost demeching the D.Va. He then moves to the enclosed room with the mini, getting a great angle behind the D.Va, a bit reminiscent to what we saw in the first fights. This angle is even better though, because not only does he demech the D.Va, it prevents the Brig and Juno from walking to help their D.Va. They either walk, and the Reaper destroys them quicker than EVA destroying her own career, or they don't walk, and the Reaper shoots them for free. Either way, Havok gets what he wants, which is close range shotgun supremacy, and walks over the enemy backline. He yet again begins in this enclosed room for the next fight, but after he sees that nobody's around him, he rotates to yet another enclosed room, flanking from behind. He once again teleports up to the windmill to get another great angle to engage from, and a third enclosed space to play around. He gets a clean headshot on Yznsa before wraithing to avoid his nade once again, but unfortunately, he and his backline just get overwhelmed by the dive. Next fight though, things are looking about as good as the future of this dead YouTube channel. The enemy team are coming up on 4 ults, but more importantly, Yznsa is back on his signature Pharah, and already you can see why, as he clears the Reaper who's trying to flank around the left side of the windmill. However, this is the best Reaper in the world we're talking about. Havok ends up teleporting above the orbital ray, then wraiths and takes down one of the best Pharah players seemingly out of thin air. To understand why and how this works, let's rewind it back to the windmill. While it looks like the Pharah has the upper hand, Havok is actually just wasting time, and more importantly, the cooldowns from Yznsa. The Pharah actually ends up using the jet dash, her boosters, and her jet fuel just to move away from the Reaper. This means that when Havok goes into the Pharah, she's got no cooldowns and no fuel to run away. The teleport is also very well timed, as it's just after the orbital ray comes down. This means that Yznsa is focused on the enemy queen and not on the Reaper, which is why he doesn't have concussion. I hope this shows that Pharah beating Reaper is a lot more nuanced than you think, and gets you to consider the matchup more in your own rank games. Yet again on a brand new map, Havok chooses to flank through the right enclosed room with the mini health pack, which also helps him avoid the Pharah who's flying around the coast. He then duels the Genji, and while it is a bit long-winded, he eventually comes out on top, teleporting back to his team once the D.Va flies onto him. The surprises keep coming as Havok teleports to the very top of the lighthouse, likely because Yznsa switches back to the Cassidy. This position allows him to see the entire fight as well as indirectly control the point down below, which is what we see here as he catches the Genji off guard. Even the D.Va demands his attention and flies straight onto him, but he just walks away, showing how insanely well Reaper can hold space. Like a Pavlovian dog, the Genji makes yet another attempt to take the lighthouse, but Havok forces him out yet again with one single shot, coupled with his sheer aura. After holding the space on the lighthouse successfully, he teleports to the enemy high grounds and collapsing on the Juno once again. This time, actually hitting a shot, unlike the clip we saw earlier. Since the main source of healing for the enemy team is now down, and there's no ultimates yet, the rest of the fight is pretty easy cleanup. In preparation for the next fight, Havok actually hides on the edge of the high grounds, which is a very good Reaper spot for this map. Unfortunately, nobody ends up pushing the high grounds, so Havok ends up dropping to zone the backline once again, wraithing out once the D.Va goes onto him, and teleporting back to point to force out the Genji. Now we get to talk about Havok's Blossom. While there are a ton of ults on the board, so things get messier than Asmongold's bedroom, he flanks to the left room with the Mega to try and get an angle behind. However, as the Juno pops her array and the Brig pops Valley, he decides to disengage and spends his time teleporting back to the top of the lighthouse. This gives him plenty of time to prepare for Blossom, and while it might not look like much, he diverts the D.Va and Brig's attention at just the right time, which helps relieve pressure for supports on the coast. In pretty much all the codes that Havok gave me, he would try to Blossom as late into the fight as he could, because to put it simply, who on this earth is gonna think about blossoming in your own Malga cage? Clearly not TVNT, the man with no hands. Timing Blossoms late is something that I've been trying to infuse into my own games, and definitely something that you should try too. Another key aspect to getting good Blossoms off is teleporting out of the enemy's line of sight, like he does here. He then waits patiently, fires a shot onto the Juno, and cancels that animation with his Blossom to get a fight-winning 2k. Ultimately, it's the teleport that makes this play possible, because if you try and make the same rotation on a hero like Venture, the enemies can see you burrow. On Genji, they can see you dash, but on Reaper, they can't see anywhere to where you go. Just look at the Cassidy's POV and how clueless he is. Before I end this video off, I of course have to talk about target priority. Havok will pretty much always prioritize the Juno because of how squishy she is. This is something that we of course saw in Ilios, both where he missed his shots and where he hit his shots, but he'll also rat in corners to catch the enemy team off guard, then teleport onto the Juno later into the fight to pretty much get a free kill. And even when he does get scouted from these little rat spots, he just leaves like my dad did, because he's Reaper. Time and time again, Havok tries to get a well-timed TP engage on the enemy Juno, and more than half the time it works. Reaper just has too much sustain to chew through. It's probably the biggest thing you can take away from this video. Flanking in the mid-fight to catch the enemy backline off guard. This is, without a doubt, something that you watching this can add to your own gameplay, as I've been doing this as well. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the #1 Reaper analysis. You can check out Havok's socials, linked in the description and pinned comments, as well as the Reaper codes that he sent me. Until next time.